What's happening, everybody?
Yeah, hello. Woohoo.
All right, hold on. I got to move my mic. I'm going to be that guy that fiddles with the mic the whole freaking time. Feel free to make fun of me, heckle. Just don't throw anything at me because you're watching me on your computer or phone. So if you throw tomatoes, salad, anything like that, that just means you're getting your phone or computer all messy. So avoid that.
Who throws salad?
I meant lettuce. I totally meant lettuce. All right, I'm going to check and make sure I can hear us. Oh, yeah. Excellent. All right, man. Welcome back. Hope everybody is doing well, staying safe. It's raining like crazy here in California. It feels more like Seattle here than it does L.A.
Yeah.
Then I look down across the street, and there's palm trees, and it's like, what? That's strange, man.
But it's normal weather for everybody else.
Yeah, the rest of the world, unless you live in the Sahara Desert, it's not normal weather. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in on Tuesday. It had been a long time since we'd done some of this broadcasting. That was a hell of a lot of fun, and we're glad that everybody tuned in and had so many killer questions, and we had a great just conversation going on. That was pretty cool, which is actually how we came up with today's topic of connectivity, workflow, interface, all that. That seems to be kind of a hot topic, patch bays, that sort of thing, so we figure we might as well just, dedicate an entire live broadcast to that so we can try to figure as much stuff out as we possibly can.
Ooh, we got hi from Australia. Look at that. Raining there too. Wow.
Nice. Well, I don't know about the rain. If you dig rain, then it's nice. If you don't dig rain, it's not nice. So here's what we're going to do for the next couple weeks. We've been talking about our plan for maybe the next 3 weeks or so. We're going to do 2 broadcasts a week. We're going to do every Tuesday and every Thursday. On Tuesday, we are going to have a specific topic. Like this past Tuesday, we were trying to record something, and we're going to stick mainly to that topic. It'll probably be 45 minutes to an hour, that sort of thing. We'll take some questions, but we're going to try to stay on the topic. And we have a handful that we've picked based on some of the questions from last time and a few ideas that we had. Then on Thursdays, we're going to have a starter topic, like a general topic, but this is more of a complete Q&A, console side chat. so we can explore, kind of whatever really goes. Because even like you setting up your interface and workflow, that's kind of a very broad, huge question, and sometimes hard to suss out via a live stream. But we will do our best. So that's the plan for the next few weeks. Next Tuesday, we're going to be joined by Mike Nealand from Ludwig Drums, and we're going to talk all about snares, the different types of snares, and how they affect the sound, and then how that fits into music or a song. We'll have something to play to. We'll be demoing some of this. Mike knows all this crap, knows some tuning stuff too. I don't know why I call it crap, but to guitar players it probably is crap. Yeah. Ernesto's like, yeah, it's a bunch of crap. But we're going to go over all that stuff, and we're going to demo it with some music so we can hear. The overall concept being more about the snares, kind of the vocal of the drum sound, and how getting the right snare or how different snares affect the sound of not only your drum sound, but possibly your music too. So that's going to be next Tuesday. Mike's awesome. I've known him for a long time, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. What did you do the other day to a Ludwig snare? Suddenly sounded amazing.
Oh, yeah. This video will be coming out. I shot part of it last night. I was hoping to have it done earlier today, but I didn't. The next video I'm actually doing with the Mike Parts microphone, just a quick demo thing that'll come out probably next week now. It's my Black Beauty. I pulled on off the lugs. There's the rubber grommets that go between the lug casings and the actual shell. I took all that crap off. I have a Genera dry, an Evans, no, HD dry, not Genera dry, HD dry on the top, and then I put this head I've never used on the bottom, which is an Evans Orchestra 300. Holy crap. That thing is a cool reso head. And then I put some Pure Cushion blaster strainers because those are my favorite. Man, my Black Beauty's never sounded so good. I really love it now. So that'll be in that Mike Parts video that'll come out sometime next week.
Mm-hmm.
What else before we get going here? Remember, we do have one thing that right now, while we're all in this worldwide lockdown, times are tough, things are tight. We are doing mixing and mastering specials to try to help finish stuff considerably cheaper than we usually do. And we'd love to work with you guys on any of that, whether it's mixing and or mastering, doesn't matter. If you need the help, you can send me a message. There's some info below in the description with links and that sort of thing. Or you can always hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Friendster, MySpace. Don't go there. I probably still have a MySpace page, though.
Ooh, those were old
I wonder
times.
who my top 8 are. So anyway, yeah. So we do have that along with the drum reamping. Also, all the drum recording courses, all 50% off for the next 3 weeks. So, have at it. We got plenty of time to sit and practice our drum recording. So, all right, enough of that. Let's get to the fun stuff. Who's here? Andy Rock, hi from Australia. Oh, we saw that. Cool. Zach, how you doing? And Pete. Dan Hegarty in the house. Oh, did he just text me too? Yep. Dan's going to throw salad. Don, how you doing?
West Virginia, look at that.
Ooh, Josh and KC Mo.
All right.
Go Chiefs. I hope you're a Chiefs fan. If not, just don't be a Broncos fan.
There's Ralph from Argentina. Yeah.
I better use the pearls.
Oh, yeah. It's the only thing that works. Yeah.
All right. So, first off, we're going to get this thing started. If you guys have any questions with your own workflows, interfaces, how things connect, whether you have a console or not, whether you have outboard gear or not, whether you have a patch bay or not, whatever, let's see if we can figure out some issues and hopefully fix them. But there's a couple things that Ernesto and I were talking about just before this that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And some of these companies don't make it necessarily that obvious. Not that I think they're trying to hide something. But first off is the actual connection.
Yes.
Right? So, we've moved past serial ports and SCSI. Thank God that stuff is gone many, many moons ago. But now you've got your USBC, you've got Thunderbolt. We still have, in some cases, older USB, actual USB connections.
Yes.
With the actual USB cable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like us with the cheese grater here, PCI.
Yes.
But most people, I would suspect, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, are using something that's probably from the past few years, past 2 or 3 years, because the prices have dropped on a lot of this stuff, which is fantastic. So it's either a USB or now a USB-C connection,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There's one thing with that. Let's just start with this, checking the connections on the back, because this is a big one.
Yeah.
And a lot of these new interfaces that are saying they're USB-C, or even Thunderbolt 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are actually still USB 2.0. And that is something that, and all this, I should say first, I probably should have started with this. Whatever your interface are trying to do, trying to buy, all depends on what you're trying to do. So let's preface that. If you've only got one channel, these connections matter a hell of a lot less. If you're going for 8 or more, doing drums, doing full bands, that sort of thing, these things actually kind of matter.
Big time.
Considerably more. But one thing is making sure that you understand what your connection is, because it's easy to go, I've got the new USB-C or new Thunderbolt, but you look at the back and it still has, do you have that up still there?
Mm-hmm.
Here, let me pull something up.
So, for example, he'll put up the...
Oh, sorry. We have 2 computers going, so I'll be able to show you some of this stuff.
Yeah, so put the Scarlet, right? So here on the Scarlet...
Oh, yeah, there we go.
For example...
Let me cut this in.
You'll have a USB-C connection, but with a little symbol on top.
And that is the USB symbol. So they're using USB-C as the connectors, the cable, but it's not actually a faster connection. It's most likely that's USB 2, right?
Yeah. So here is another graph. Look at this. These are the speeds. So some of you can recognize the ports, right? Usually the white plastic inside the port is the old 1.0 or 1.1, and then it became 2.0. And then you got the blue plastic inside the rectangular port, and that's USB 3. And now it just changed to 3.1 generation 1, and then 3.1 generation 2. Talk about confusing users, right? And then apparently you have a type C connector, which is still USB 3.2, and that's half the speed of Thunderbolt, right? Thunderbolt is the big kahuna. That's the one they use for video, and very few vendors put actually that for audio, unless they specify. And how do you know? Well, you'll see a Thunderbolt icon. So I think you can see that in there. Let me zoom that in.
I'm going to pull a picture up here.
Look at that. See, so Thunderbolt, it has that little lightning coming down. And you have 2 options, either Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 2. But Thunderbolt 2, you can actually see that it's a different port. So, for example, the Apollo, some of you guys say, I'm not going to buy an Apollo, but sometimes you might. Look, see, the Apollo, for example, has still a Thunderbolt 2 connection. And now you would ask, well, does it all matter? It's like, well, yes, depending if the interface has lots of inputs, or like in the case of the Apollo, it also comes with included effects, right? So the whole Apollo ecosystem is, they have their interfaces with their own chips inside that run the effects. So it uses the bandwidth of Thunderbolt so that more of those effects can go back into your DAW. Because I have, for example, a Firewire Apollo, and I run out of bandwidth very fast. If I had a Thunderbolt, I would have more effects.
Is that 800 or 400?
It's 800, but it tells you, there's a graph.
I just asked that question.
But in that same interface, I have the Thunderbolt option because it was included. So at some point, I can go to Thunderbolt, but I would have to change my computer for that.
Yeah, he's on a cheese grater too. And the thing is, they work. Well, actually, these are very souped-up cheese graters. Yeah. About everything you can do to one has been done.
So, and then, and to finish the thing about the ports up, this is, where's this other one? Where you see everything being USB-C port, but with the little symbols next to it. So here on the left, you can see you got the USB symbol. That means it's USB 2.0. So not audio. Then you got super speed. Then you got that SS with the USB symbol. And then there's the famous lightning bolt, and that is Thunderbolt 3.
If you're at home and you're just doing vocals and that's all you have to do, you can get away with a lot less. If you're doing like me and you need 16 tracks sometimes for drums or full bands or 24, then having the fastest connection possible is important. If nothing else, so you can set buffers low enough, especially if you're having to do monitoring, for multiple people on there, then it becomes really important that you have the fastest connection possible. Because otherwise, latency would be a nightmare, especially if you're trying to monitor things back. I'm doing this. I keep looking to the right because I'm actually doing the switch here.
Oh, yeah. We're doing the job of 4 people, so bear with us. So, yeah, I mean, it's sometimes just buying an interface because it's cheap. It's like it's cool if you have budget limitations, but really research what you're going to do, because you buy something, you're like, oh, man, this is not what I wanted to do. So it's like, well, because I want to run to some hardware. It's you have to look at the outputs of the unit and all that other stuff. So we can go into that.
I think it's important that you look at what you want to do, and then you plan further than that. If you're like, oh, I want to get an interface, I only want to be able to say send 2 channels out to a mix bus compressor. Great. So you need, we need 4 channels to get out and back in, right? Well, we should probably look at actually going 8 at that point. But once you decide that, then you have to look and go, okay, how much, especially the cheaper stuff, has gotten better over the past, especially I'd say 4 or 5 years, there's been some real jumps in quality. So at the old place, that was 2006, right in there, 2005, 2006 somewhere. We had some like Delta 1010s, and then we had something else. Oh, man, this stuff was terrible.
Yeah.
But we figured it out, and you make it work.
Yeah.
Sometimes having a limitation like that helps you figure out how to get the best sounds possible. So
Sure.
when you get to upgrade gear, you're even better.
Well, and that's also why so many people stayed on the Pro Tools PCI rigs for so long, because the PCI connection was just so solid.
Yeah. Sounded good. It was stable.
Yeah. I mean, we have PCI over here, so it's hard to beat. PCI is hard to beat. So Thunderbolt, they say it's supposed to be the portable PCI. But it's.
Oh, so okay.
We have to find out.
Big River, this is interesting. So you guys have an Apollo X8P, a twin MK2, and 2 Focusrite Claret Octopre's. Are those on different rigs, or are you using those things in combination? And then 2018 Mac Mini. That'll probably. This about Motu is the stuff lasts.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be the sexiest of interfaces. I mean, can an interface be sexy? But that stuff is built to last. It's freaking great.
Well, I mean, if we look at what we have over here, it's just amazing that it's still working. So.
And working really well too. Oh, so you've got the Octopre's running into the Apollo, so you're using the light pipe. Yeah. See now. Man, there's so many ways we can go on this, but I'm gonna go with what Big River said here. Another thing you can look at if you know you're gonna need more pre's. Let's say you're starting out, or maybe not starting out, but let's say you've got a 4-channel mic pre or interface that maybe has pre's in it, maybe it doesn't, and you put units. There's a set of PreSonus pre's, and there's 3 of the Motu units, and I don't like connection. Everything shows up in the DAW, and it's great. Like the PreSonus, I think it's the Digimax ones, some of those you can only do light pipe. That is a great way of using stuff together, though. So light pipe, but you're restricted to 44 and 48. If you go to, well, I shouldn't say restricted. You can go higher, but your channel count gets cut in half. So if you have 8 channels on a light pipe connection and you go to 88 or 96, now you have 4. If you're at 44 or 48, you would have the total 8. But that can be a great way to add more channels. So Bene, you use the Ensemble and the Focusrite Octopre together. Does that work really well? What's up, Julian? That's one thing I will say is their connections have gotten, as far as the reliability, a lot better, a lot less troubleshooting than there used to be.
My SansApp, XFX, and Torpedo Live, all connected all the time. Wow,
Nice.
That's a nice setup.
So what's the average channel count here for everybody? We doing 4, we doing 8, we doing 2, we doing 16, we doing 72. That's a real number, right? Yeah. Yeah, SSL, right?
But I mean, it looks like the majority are like between 8 and 16. It's great.
Oh, the driver. What Eric said, that's actually a good, talking about the drivers.
Oh, yeah.
Because some companies make fantastic drivers and some use generic drivers.
Yeah.
Especially on the less expensive stuff. But I would say, and I can only really speak for Motu on this, you've used a few other ones more than I have, but I will say the Motu drivers are rock freaking solid. And we've never had any connection issues. Things don't drop.
Yeah. Yeah, you can basically say that low input interfaces, low count interfaces usually use generic drivers, meaning that you plug it in and Logic or any DAW will just see it, so you don't have to install anything. Anything that's like 4 or has their own mixer or whatever inputs, then you need to probably install a driver, because otherwise the DAW won't see it.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew you needed a driver. I didn't know that.
So a lot of the affordable Scarlett stuff, Focusrite Scarlett, they're all generic. They use the Apple USB core audio driver, and then just you look at your devices and preferences and say, oh, there it is, Scarlett, select it, and then you're good to go.
That's been something I've been interested in quite a bit, especially with one rack you can get 32 channels in and out with the Quantum 4848. But they're an example of a company that I think is actually staying kind of cutting edge and making quality stuff at a great price. I've used a lot of Persona stuff over the years, and I have nothing bad to say about any of them.
Well, look at Dakota. He's going.
I have 32 pre's. I have 24 on the console, 8 others, 40 ins, 40 outs. It's a lot.
I do mobile recording. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the Studio Live is great for that. Makes things easy, and you get faders and things in front of you too. Now, one thing too, to consider, and this is a question I've got a lot all over the place. I see some of you guys have bigger track counts. That's great. So if you're planning on, let me speak from my angle. I like to run a lot of things out to hardware, obviously, and use the hardware. And there's multiple ways of doing that. I've chosen the patchbay route. So everything, like the patchbay is the central nervous system of everything in the studio. Every room goes to it. Every piece of gear goes to it. So every connection happens there and then goes out from there. Another way you could do, and that's very useful because I'm tracking and mixing with that stuff. So I need to be able to do different things and have the flexibility for that. It may just be drums. I may have a band in here running all 40 ins and outs, which happens more often than not. The other thing you could think of, and this is something I remember talking to Barry Rudolph about, and I think you have yours set up at home this way, where instead of having the patch bay, you use your I.O. as the patch bay. Mm-hmm. So I know what Barry does, he's got a couple racks of a bunch of outboard gear, and then I think he's using the SSL, or he's got a couple digis in the SSL, I can't remember what it is. And his outboard gear is hardwired to channels on the I.O., which is the way you do it with the Rupert Neve bus compressor and your other Neve outboard gear, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having to do what I do, which is go get a good old-fashioned patch cable, go stick it in the patch bay, route it to somewhere else, go back to the board, make sure it's there. In the DAW, all you have to do is go, I want to use my, Rupert Neve EQs, and I just set it to output, whatever they're on, 3 and 4, and bam, they're there, and then you bring it back in on the same channels. If you're doing it that way, you're limited by the amount of I.O. you have. Then you would have, if you only had 8 channels, then you could either do 4 stereo pieces of gear, 8 mono pieces of gear, but you're probably going to have monitoring in there too, which is going to take up 2 outputs, so you really only have 6 channels in and out. If you go the patch bay route, it's easier to expand and cheaper, ultimately, because you don't have to keep buying more interfaces. But if you're in a hybrid system, say you're a mixer and you're in a total hybrid system, and that's all you're doing is mixing, I'd set up multiple I.O.s. I'd take all my gear in here, and it would go right to the I/O, and I'd never have to worry about a freaking patch bay again. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, if anybody ever saw the I/O plugin.
Oh, yeah. And I think here, I'll pull that up real quick. I think Pro Tools has the same thing. Which computer am I on? Let's see, camera 4. So there's the,
you know, whatever inputs and outputs you have on your interface. And that's another thing you want to make sure whenever you are on the market for interfaces, always look in the back of the outputs you have, right? Because you cannot use the left and right monitor outputs to just send to hardware, because then, you know, you don't have outputs anymore. I mean, you can, but you just lose live listening. So make sure you have at least 4 outputs in the back so you can run out to hardware.
Yeah, it looks like Eric has that kind of setup there, and it works really good. Wade, huge fan. The Focusrite control software. Yeah, my limited use on the Focusrite has been that their software is lacking. That's the only thing I can say.
Yeah, and then and what I've seen, because I go a lot to the Logic Pro Help forum, and you know, I help people out, and you know, they come with the most amazing problems. Sometimes you go like, okay, you know, I hear things double, and say, oh, okay. So usually what happens in those cases, let's say we have an Apollo or an RME, they have their own mixer software, and what happens in those cases is like they have their own input faders for direct monitoring. That means you can monitor through the interface without going to a DAW, but you want to hear the effects on the DAW. So what happens? You got double monitoring, right? So what I do, so I can hear only the effects in Logic, because I want to hear what Logic captures, not what the interface captures. I turn the faders down on the Apollo console, and that's how you avoid the famous chorus effect. Why do I have a chorus effect on my input? Because you double monitoring.
Oh, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's great, but it doesn't work.
Let's see. Engineer 240, thanks, buddy. I'm glad you've been with us the past 3 years. That's awesome. Do I ever mix solely in the box? You do, right? I mean, you have a couple he's got some really nice Neve, a few pieces of Neve outboard gear that's fantastic.
But yeah, I do in the box. I mean, mostly, yeah.
Me, no, I don't.
Well, I mean, you got the facility, so.
But I also,
it's a
I
different
get bored.
workflow.
It's a very different workflow.
Totally
and honestly, I don't think at this point in the game, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time trying to fix this issue, but I don't mix as well when I'm in the box. I fiddle, and I fiddle a lot, and I hate fiddling. One, I can't play fiddle. If I could play fiddle, it'd be different, and that's why I'm not a comedian. But I end up, just turning stuff, the immediacy of having things in front of me, that's outside the box, that is. And I also prefer the overall sound of things. I feel that I have to do less things to try to get things where I want money that are a lot easier than this. So I work the way that's the most fun to me, even if sometimes it ends up being a little more work. If I have to do a recall or something, whatever. I'm making music.
Obviously everything is run through their ecosystem, the DSP, so that's why you don't have latency. But it's a pretty innovative setup. I mean, Jesus, there's so many platforms now. Sometimes you just go crazy. But one thing I want to add in the box, the tendency that I've seen and I've experienced is when it shows me what the frequency there, and it's like you're not paying attention to what it sounds like. You're just looking at all these meters and all
the lights.
Yeah,
I like shine. Yeah. Yeah, I would. My guess is most everybody's more in the box than out of the box. And that's totally cool. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just tools, right? Again, for me, it just gets to where I want to be, being out with things in front of me. I hate using the mouse and scrolling through things, and looking at the computer screen the whole time.
Well, there's a question here. My studio is all analog. My question is how to hook up the patch bay to the board for mixing. No
saw at all?
No saw at all.
Not sure what that is. Don, if you could clarify that'd be great. But it depends. There's more than one way to hook any of this stuff up, really, especially if you use an outboard. You can hook your I/O directly to a mixer. If you're just using the channels, that's one thing you could do. You could come right out of your I/O right into the board, and then back in. Like for me, I end up summing on the board, so I'm only printing 2 tracks back in. So in that case, you would need more outputs than you need inputs, right? Unless you're running a lot of multiple inputs back in. In my case, since I track through this too, I also need the same amount of input, so I just went 40 in, 40 out. That way, no matter what I'm doing, tracking or mixing, I can do it. So it depends. I hook up through the patchbay because, again, it's partially because there's recording workflow and there's mixing workflow. I don't have the money yet to have separate, and hopefully that will happen someday.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the recording rig. Oh, here's the mixing rig. That would be awesome.
Yeah, he meant no DAW at all.
Oh, going to tape?
I don't know. I mean, he just says...
I mean, you could treat DAW like a tape machine, too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean tape, whew, that's another...
I keep wanting to get a tape machine in here, and every time I bring it up, the look on his face is just, I'm nuts. But it's going to happen one of these days.
Wow. So they say he doesn't have a computer? Wow. I mean, if he's going
if you're no DAW, then you have to go to some other sort of
medium,
yeah. So you're either hard disk.
Yeah.
You could do something like that. Some of those, I mean, you can find those at really reasonable prices. You could also, I mean, tape would be your other choice. Tape would be fun, although a headache. But I would say probably hard disk would be your best bet. Your Pro Tools subscription expired. You're on PC. What would you go to if you weren't on Logic?
Very good question. Look at the way it looks. Look at the interface. A lot of people that...
Well, it's partially that.
Yeah.
Though, and partially workflow.
But there's a lot of people that like Studio One on PC because it's a mix between Logic and Cubase. But beyond that, you have to look at it in terms of how do they do things.
It also depends maybe a little on what you're doing. If you were doing more music, Studio One. I mean, I've used that a little bit. The interface is a little clunky, but they're improving it all the time. If you're doing, movies, TV, and you're on a PC, more of that stuff I might look at Nuendo just because it has some similar ins and outs like Pro Tools that they use a lot in the film and TV world. So
you got DP now for PC?
Really?
Yep.
Man, I forget about Digital Performer. Holy crap.
Yeah, because Digital Performer has very good MIDI as well. And the video side also is very good.
Big River says he's Studio One user, been with them since beta version 11 years ago. Awesome DAW. Yeah. Do you shoot out the Trident versus other consoles in the price range, Audient, or used? Okay, I'll pan you. The Trident. I worked a lot on Tridents when I was, having my strictly drumming career and always loved them. We'd work over at, you all heard of Sound City, right? Well, there was multiple studios. That complex is like a big U, and you had the main Sound City rooms. When you drove in, the main Sound City rooms were on the right. You had the studio in the corner. I can't remember what they called it. Then the one in the middle was Sound Image, and then they had a bunch of rehearsal and other suite, like production suites on the side. And the middle room, the Sound Image room, had a Trident in it. And I worked over there quite a bit, and I always loved the sound of that. So for me, going with the Trident, one, I had done a little bit of work with them on some of their other products at the time. I don't know how many years ago. And when this came out, because this is actually, I love this. I was just telling Ernesto last night how happy I am that this is actually the prototype for the Trident 88. I got to do all the beta testing with them, and Justin and Alan and everybody down there, Joe Vizzetti at the time. They're all great people, man, and they make great stuff. So I got to beta test everything, and it had that sound that I had loved on so many of the sessions that I had done that was a Trident. I have used an Audient. They sound great. Didn't have the mojo to me of what a Trident has, or that color and sound. I always felt like it was a bit kind of cleaner, and I personally like things that add color, add things. I'm not a keep it clean kind of guy. I mean, I take showers every once in a while, but on my sound, I like it to be dirty sometimes. So it was a no-brainer for me to go with the Trident. And then when I got to beta test everything, I mean, I fell in love with the thing instantly. And they've made some improvements over what the 80Bs were as far as the overall sonics of it. So, yeah, that's why, that's my long-winded story there. I saw another Trident. What do you think?
Yeah, Don, if you can, just tell us what do you want to record to, the medium. If you're doing tape, hard disk, tell us.
I used to do stuff on hard disk. We used to have a Lisa's hard disk. I would avoid ADAT. Don't go to that. That is not vintage. That should just never be used ever again. Go to a tape machine instead. Big River. Let's see. Guys, I hope I'm not missing any questions here. I'm going to answer the Big River question here. Look and see if we missed anything. What do you think of the Trident software emulations like the Softube A-Range EQ and the Slave VCC? I have not Slate. I've not used the Slate stuff. To be honest with you, some of the things I have used not been my favorite. I know I'm going to be hated for that, but whatever. I have heard great things about it. It just, never suited me. The Softube I have used before, and that A-Range EQ is pretty nice, actually. I don't know. I haven't actually tested that against my 500 series ones, so I can't. That would be interesting to do, actually. And then I'll get a rack mount from those guys and check it out against that too. But I do say the Softube stuff I liked. They also, Trident has released their own, along with Silo Sound Labs. They have the A-Range. No, sorry, I'm lying. The 80B, not the A-Range. The 80B and the Trident 9066, which is a really cool vintage EQ that not a lot of people knew about. I didn't even really know about it until I got talking with the guys at Silo Sound Labs and Alan Hyatt, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, this thing is cool. I use it like crazy now. And next week I am going to do a video to show those because it's got some really interesting filters on it. The filters alone are super cool. But I do think the Softube stuff is pretty cool. When mixing and using outboard gear, do you generally have to run your buffer at 32 or can you get away with 64? Okay, for me, I usually run it as low as possible. Most of the time it's at 32 just because I can and it doesn't get in the way. If I have a high track count and say I'm running a fair amount of like plug-in stuff as well as going in and out of the computer, I'll knock it up to 64. And usually I never have to go above that, and it's totally fine. I don't worry so much about the latency when I'm mixing out here and printing back in, because I have on the board I have my 2-track, and that's what I'm monitoring. So when I come out to the board, it goes to the master channel, it goes out to the C1 and the Neve 8803, and then it prints back in through the Apogees, and I'm monitoring that input back into Logic via the 2-track, so I hear exactly what Logic is printing. I don't really worry that if I turn that off and just hear what's on the board and there's a little skip of latency, I don't care because I rarely do that. Once I go in and out, I'm on the 2-track, so I'm only listening to what's getting printed. And most of the time, all of the time actually, once I get out here, it's out. I'm not doing an I/O plug-in on some channels plus sending everything out to the board. And then I have another computer my computer here that's usually over here behind me that runs my outboard effects, which is linked to the main computer via Ethernet. So I don't worry too much about the latency. If you're doing I/O plugins and things, yeah, you're going to have to figure out the best setting, especially if you start sending things to buses, because there's aux in the box. Because a lot of the times once you start loading plugins on your auxes and maybe especially I/Os, then you start running into some buffer issues. Sometimes it's clicks and pops. You just may have to set it higher. But usually I go as low as I can and I leave it until it's a problem.
Look at that. That's what Don is using.
Oh, wow. Hold on. I gotta pull this up. 1 second. Let me switch over to camera. Oh, I can just hit
digital 8-track. Look at that. That is freaking awesome.
So you're going to have, can you find a photo of the back of that?
Yeah, let me see.
Here, I'm gonna cut back to us real quick. He's gonna see if we can find a photo of the back of that. Because if you're running that with a mixer, you've got 8 tracks. Oh, no. So you're gonna probably go direct to that and then back out to the monitoring. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. Hold on.
Wow, those are all RCAs.
Those are old unbalanced connections. Make those runs as short as you can.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I got it right here. Yeah, so you're going to go to your console. You have, if you're, did he say mixing or recording? Do you remember?
He's recording into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're recording. You got stuff coming into your console. You're limited to 8 channels here unless you have multiple of these things. I wonder if you can use those ADATs to link them together. But never use one of these, actually. So you're going to come on the console, and you're going to go out 8 channels. Assuming I don't know what mixer you have, but if it's got direct outs, you can go direct out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or, stereo groups. If you're, an older mixer that's like a 14-2 or something like that, or 16-2, where you're only the stereo outs and you're only printing 2, I'm assuming you have direct outs on your channels. Then for monitoring, you're going to have to take those outputs and bring them back in on the monitor path on whatever your mixer is. If you have an inline mixer. If you have one that you can't do inline, then you have to split. So then if you had you'd have to have a 16-channel mixer if you wanted to record and monitor. It's like what's the API the school has? Can't remember the model number.
Yeah.
1608?
Yeah. I don't know the number, but it's
one of the APIs. It's a split console, so it's 32 channels, but if you're going to monitor on the board, you actually only have 16 for tracking and 16 for monitoring. The Trident is a split and inline, which I think you can do on a lot of the SSLs too, meaning when I'm recording, it's inline. So if I come into mic pre on channel 1, I send it to my DAW. In your case, it would be the hard disk recorder. Here, let me get back out of that. It'd be the hard disk recorder, and then it comes back out on monitor 1 automatically on mine. So if you have that, that's what you would have to do. So you'd be monitoring directly off of that thing, which totally works. That's actually cool. I want to hear some stuff, man. I'll get a community tab going with where everybody can drop some links to what they're working on. I want to hear some new things. I got a lot of extra time on my hands. I need some new music to check out and some new people's videos. So please send me some stuff.
Wow. How long have you been a Logic user? Ooh, jeez.
I started at version 4.7.
So
it was still
this is
made in Germany. What was the company that made it for Apple?
eMagic,
yeah.
So that's like, what, 03, 04?
Yeah, it would have been right around there. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a long time. It looked a lot different, and it wasn't quite as easy to use. Dakota, using Slate for 3 years, haven't found any better for the price. Yeah, I will say, man, their deals, holy crap, you can get a lot for your money. They probably have one of the better deals out there as far as what you get for the monthly spend. Yeah, man. And that has a lot to do with it, too. We're spending a lot of money on all this gear and things, and I consider plug-in gear, too, that we're trying to do. So you got to find what gets you the sound you want balanced with the money you have to spend. So we're not living on the streets.
How is up?
How is up? Yes. How rare. They're in Taiwan right now. I texted him like an hour before the broadcast saying, wake up, we're doing a broadcast. Okay, when you're mixing, why don't you use maximum buffer? Well, if I was mixing in the box, I'd probably have to up the buffer once you start running a lot of plugins. I don't have to, for me personally, and you can answer yours separately, but for me personally, I don't really have to because I'm doing most of my processing outside of the box, so I keep it low so it's just responsive for me.
Yeah.
And I do print stems back in a lot of the times and end up lining things back up, and it's just I'm already really close, so it's very little work for me to do at the end.
Yeah, usually
Plus I'm slaving a second computer.
Yeah,
so.
usually the buffer matters when you're using a lot of software instruments.
Right.
Because they tax the CPU. But, I mean, you're doing mostly audio, so that doesn't bother the CPU that much.
Some plugins can be that way.
Yeah.
I mean, in Logic, like the adaptive limiter can do that. The multipressor can do that. Some of the more heavy ones. But I'm outside the box, so the buffer is a little less of an issue for me. How long have you been? Okay, there we got that one. Sorry, I'm trying to read through this stuff.
How it says, great you guys are doing this. I have something to watch during breakfast.
Awesome.
Oh, that's a great comment. Oh, my Lord.
That's why we're here.
Oh, unbalanced synths. Oh, how do we record those? Do you DI before you go into an external mic pre?
Wait, for what? What was the question?
For unbalanced synths. So only TS connection.
It would depend on how long my run was. So if let's say if I'm sitting right here and the keyboard player's next to me and I'm running into, my overstairs or the tone luxes or something like that, I might not go to a DI. I might go right in because I've got a short 6-foot run or something like that. If they're in there like playing live or with the band or something and I'm having to run them to DIs in there and they're coming through the wall and it's getting routed, I might take short TS cables into a DI. That's actually exactly what I do. I take short TS cables, drop them right outside the synth into DIs and then bam into the wall panels. But if they were in here sitting next to me in here, I don't know if I'd go through the headache of getting an extra DI out. I'd probably either go into my overstairs or I love my Tone Lux mic pre's have a great DI on them.
Well, we got Ty, the sound guy. Cheers from North Hollywood. Look at that.
Dude, ruling.
I would love to come check out this bay if we're not going to get arrested for going out.
We'll just do it late at night and just, wear sunglasses at night and a hoodie and we'll make it happen. It'll look like a drug deal, but that's all right.
Yeah, I mean the buffer thing is really dependent on your actual computer, because I've seen people with really old computers, expecting to run all this contact stuff, right? And
We got audio back. I see what I did wrong. I'm trying to do this switch at the same time, and I think I know what I did wrong. Let me know if audio is back, folks. Okay, cool. I know what I did wrong. I won't go to that one again until I fix that later. Always something. But anyway, I think what we missed was we were talking about if you've got those big contact libraries or something like that, East-West strings or whatever, running them off an external drive versus running them on your internal.
Yeah, but it usually depends on the speed of the internal and if you have enough space. Because usually, if in all the new laptops, if you have an SSD, stay on the internal for all the sample stuff. Projects, you can always go external. Make sure it's USB 3, and SSD is fine.
Now, what if I'm running an external SSD through Thunderbolt? Is that still slower than just going to the internal?
It can be. It depends on the brand, and if the connection actually is Thunderbolt or if it's just USB 3.
Oh, so even on those hard drive enclosures, it might be a Thunderbolt actual connector, but only be a USB 3.
Yes, Because if it says USB-C,
I'm learning stuff too.
if it says USB-C and it doesn't have the little lightning arrow on it, it might be just USB.
Got it.
So
always check that, man.
yeah. So always check the what the vendor says about the hard drive. If it's only the port, USB-C port, it doesn't mean it is Thunderbolt.
Ty, the sound guy. When our audio went out, he goes, "Help, audio is out and I can't spell." I was going to try typing something too, but I read that and I got nervous that I'd misspell something. That's great. Okay, I know there's a couple things I missed up here. Question-wise. Michael, do we have any room correction on the monitors? No, none whatsoever. I do go through this room. There are a couple issues in little spots in the room, but this area right in here is pretty damn accurate, so I haven't worried about it too much. But I am intrigued by some of the new software correction, and I think at some point I'm going to try it out because I'm curious. I keep mentioning it to him, and he's like, great, another one of your crazy ideas. But I think we were watching a video on it not too long ago, and it's like, you know what, that'd be worth trying out. I think I know this room well enough right now to where I could judge if it was better or not. I've done enough work in here. But as of right now, I would say this area right here, we've got everything set to where right here it's pretty accurate. So if I'm mixing and the artist is here, maybe they're sitting in the back. There's a couple seats in here I tell them not to sit in because I know there's a couple areas that are boomy towards the back and on the side. But when it comes critical listening, then I have the artists come up and sit and listen in that same spot that I'd been listening in just to double check. But the room, that correction that's on my list to try because I'm curious. I've seen enough to make me curious.
Oh, NS10s, how do they compare to the ones we use here?
It's been a long time since I've worked on a pair of NS10s, and I may be one of the few people that hated working on NS10s. Everything I ever did on NS10 sounded horrible. And the people that swore by them and all their stuff, they'd work on NS10s and all their stuff came out great. I don't think these are I spend most of my time on the 5s here. I think you have a set of 5s also because we have them with the sub, so it's kind of a Triumph system in a way. But I think the NS10s especially are a little brighter, I would say.
Yeah. And more pokey in the mid-range.
Yeah. The 5s definitely have a forward mid-range, but it's not as right there in your face. The 8s, completely different mid-range. And even if you look at the Yamaha graphs, they show dips there, and then when you listen to them, that's exactly what you hear. I don't spend a lot of time on the 8s. I'll kind of, after working 80%, 85% on the 5s, I'll go to the 8s a little bit here and there and just listen just in case something really drastically sticks out. But I would say the 5s have a smoother version of the NS10 mid-range, but are not as bright or harsh in the top end. But it's been a while since I've worked on NS10, so that's my memory. Engaging high-Z before hitting the mic. Warm audio. Oh, hold on. Let me pull that WA12 up and take a look. So the question Eric's got here, engaging high Z before hitting the mic for one of the synths. Because you want to do some synth recording, you got the warm audio WA12. Hold on a second.
I mean, I can look it up. What do you want?
Oh, just look up the warm audio WA12. Don, you got to let me know how that works with that old hard disk recorder, man. I am so curious about that. Is it possible to upload photos in here, man? I'd love to see the console and stuff that you have too. So now, while he's pulling a picture of the WA12 up, sometimes you do. If that one has a high Z, for instance, my Tone Lux has an instrument in, which is it's switching the impedance, so it makes it the same thing on. I'm pointing down to where the gear is, even though you can't see it. The overstayers have a line input on there, so if I'm plugging straight into the front of those with synths, I hit the line button, which is pretty much the same thing on my Tone Luxes over here. Oh, and the Joe Meeks, actually. The Joe Meeks can be really cool for synths, actually. I will say. They're cheap, and they sound pretty cool. You find one?
Yeah.
We're having some slow download internet issues here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get back to you on that, Eric. As soon as he pulls that up, we'll take a look. But I think you're on the right thing, or right path there.
Yeah, right?
Caspers, how you doing, brother? I hope you're doing well, man.
This one, right?
Yes. So you're going to have to I used to have one of those a long time ago. You will have to hit the high Z button and then use as normal. That actually should sound pretty good with your synths. I remember liking that on, bass and stuff like that, direct sound. So that actually should sound pretty good. And it's orange. What am I missing? Yeah, Big River, man. The NS10s on their own will kill your ears. Yeah, the sub kind of helps when you get some bottom on there because not only does it fill out what's missing, but it seems to feel like it subdues the highs a little bit. Or you got to do the old, toilet paper over the tweeter trick. I got to say, I love the 5s. I've been working on these 5s. I think this is the second set we've had here, so they're the newer, the HS5s, but I started with the HS50s, and I absolutely love them. Okay. Ultimate Studios Inc. 2020 Studio Tour with Routing Matrix is due, so when will that... You know what? I've actually been thinking about that, and you're right. It is due. Tell me what exactly you want in the routing matrix, and I'll see how easy I can make that. But yeah, I think sometime next week. There's a couple videos I need to finish. First one with the STC 84 mic from Mic Parts on the snare. I've got the Trident plugin thing I want to do. The successor, Heritage Audio successor, which is freaking awesome, is in the loop there. And then we have a bunch of guitar stuff. But I am really soon, I promise, it is time for a new studio tour because a lot has changed since the last one, including my hair is a lot longer. So let me know what you want in that routing matrix. I have done a couple videos, and I'll find those and I'll post them in a second here, of the routing from the patchbay and how the rooms and stuff are connected. Because we do have a new ISO booth. It's not completely finished yet, but it's in the back. And I've got 6 channels back there, and it's larger. I could actually fit a drum set back there. I do a lot of the guitars and things back there, percussion, that sort of thing when we need to play live. So I need to kind of show some of that stuff. So Don has the Carvin CL24. Oh, okay. So yeah, he's working on a... I'm not familiar with that exact one, but I believe that stuff has direct out. So, man, that is an old school setup. That's kind of cool. And that's another thing with all this is we all different. I'm seeing different variations of in the box. Some people with some outboard gear. Then there's a studio live thing here. And then I've got this, all this crap. And then Ernesto's got his hybrid. That's the cool thing about this is everybody's got, there's room to have your approach. Even if we steal half our ideas or more from the people that we look up to, because I know I steal my ideas all the time, but we still get to go at it the way we want to go at it. And that's what makes us all a little different. And I think that's cool. I think that's cool.
Did we check out those Kali audio monitors?
I don't no, but Barry Rudolph speaks very highly of them. A lot, and I got to hear him at his place when I was over there recently, and they actually I was impressed with how good they sound. Where I saw something from John. I don't have deal with a lot of MIDI, John. By the time if I'm doing it, I print things to audio right away. So it's there, and if I'm mixing somebody else's stuff and they have MIDI, that stuff gets printed. So I don't.
Any piece
I
of
like
gear?
to have audio.
Any piece of gear you regret selling? That's a great question.
I don't have to think on that one yet. What's all the stuff I've sold over the years?
I mean, I know regret buying, but
oh yeah, I've definitely had regret buying. I don't know if I've had a regret on selling anything yet.
No, because usually you keep it,
Yeah.
So you say, yeah.
And the times that I, before when I was hurting for money and had to sell gear, there was always an extra piece of gear or two that I was kind of like, it's not vintage yet, so I can sell it and still buy it back later. Let me think about that, though. I got to think all the stuff I've sold. I almost sold my piccolo snare that I've had since 1991 several times, and when it came down to it, I didn't let the guy come over to get him, and that I'm glad I did. That would have been a regret instantly.
Didn't you sell some Star Wars memorabilia?
I don't regret that. After Phantom Menace, I had no regrets whatsoever selling that. Damn the Phantom Menace. Ooh, twin Q, Eric. Yeah, the twin Qs are cool. I like those things.
Oh yeah, I regret buying that damn SSL.
Don, I want to see a photo, man. I love it. You've got the old Carvin and the hard disk, and all your effects are analog. I've just been buying a lot of old analog effects too. I liked a lot of the old cheap stuff that most people think is crap, and I totally don't think it's crap, and I think it's cool. I just put a second quad reverb in. I just got it the other day. Now I'm looking at some Yamaha old delays, the old model. I can't remember the model number. Is it D500 or 1500? Oh, wait, that's the other unit. I can't remember. I've got so many things in my reverb list that I'm watching right now.
Yeah, they're asking about how big is the ISO room for the guitar cabs.
There's two. So there's one directly to my left over here that is probably about 10 feet long, and at the widest part, maybe about 6 feet wide. It's kind of shaped like this a little bit, and it's really dead. I mean, dead, which I do a lot of guitars in there and vocals. Guitars sound great in there, especially when you want just dry in your face. Heavy guitars sound good. I've even stuck people with acoustic guitars in there, and you just get this beautiful dry sound that's like sits right here. The one in the back, and I think I put up a recent, that was on Instagram. I'll have to find that and put it up on YouTube, or maybe I'll just do that studio tour that I need to do. The one in the back was always meant to be there when we build here, because that's where all the drum storage and some of the soldering bench and all that stuff is. And now I have I have so much drum stuff up there. I have a lot of racks. I'd always meant to take a third of that and create another ISO booth. Well, as I got more gear and started needing more room back there, I decided I didn't want to partition that room, because once you put that wall up, you lose flexibility of where you can put things, especially if we have full bands in here or doing live concerts and things like that. A lot of the times I need to put a lot of stuff back there. In this case, I wanted to leave enough space to have another ISO. I'm going to leave all the racks of drums and everything back there. None of that's been a problem. None of the snares stay in there anyway. And it's probably 12 feet. If I'm standing inside it, it's 12 feet to each side, and I probably have another 10 feet from the wall, give or take a few feet. From where all the drum gear starts. But the room itself is about 22 feet wide. It'd be 22 by 12 kind of, with 12-foot ceilings. The ceiling will get finished off. So even though I'm using one side of that room, I've got a little bit of acoustic treatment around there just to make that part of it cool. But the fact that it's not going to have another wall and be smaller, I can put guitars back there and not baffle them off. And I've actually been able to set room mics up there with them, or have things more open, like a percussion player or something like that back there, and it doesn't sound like you're in a tiny ISO booth because the rest of the room is open. So that's the second one. So the first one is very intimate, works very well, very dry. The one in the back is got a little bit more freedom, and it's not as dry in there, a little bit more natural sounding. And then I have HDMI on the wall, so if I have to put a person back there, I can set up a camera on both sides and a monitor so you can actually see each other. Let's see, what's next? Okay, we talked about the Cali audio. Yeah, I only got to hear him at Barry Rudolph's, and he really liked him, and I got to say, I played some stuff on him. I was very impressed by them. Hey, notes on paper, Eric, that's the same thing I do, man. I have a clipboard over there on the couch. That's what I use. I used to try to do it with the phone or whatever. I could never get it right. So I like to pull out the clipboard and paper, man. That's the way to go. Big River says, oh, yeah, I regret buying that damn SSL X disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spent too much money on things before that I was like, why? By the way.
Oh, in Logic to record always to -18 or -6. I've been sticking to -18 myself.
I usually go around -12 to -15. kind of average, with my absolute peaks around, when you get that excited drummer or singer, guitar player, around -9. So there's plenty of headroom for the occasional super loud spike. But I'm always printing compression and things like that, so I'm usually containing it. But I like to stay down. I'm always going to kind of get things around -15 to come out to the board anyway, so I try to record there as much as I can. Although when you're in the middle of the sessions and people get excited, things can change, and sometimes you miss it.
Which is another thing a lot of people forget, right? It's like whatever the DAW wants to see, depending on the plugin you have, and then we think, we gotta fill up that waveform, and so you gotta be
watching
careful.
the meters. The meter does not need to go to 0 dBFS.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with the input into your interface.
John says props for the Digitech DSP 128 Plus. I love that thing, man. A friend of mine gave that to me. I use it all the time. It's got some great settings in it. I print on drums sometimes for effects, but I do like the delays on guitar. It's pretty cool. Dakota, I actually do have tracking sheets that I keep in Logic, in the computer, and I don't even fill them out half the time now. If it's a new artist I'm working with, or if it's a big thing where there's multiple musicians, we got a full band and everything, I'll pull them out every time then, and I'll go through that and get my ideas down. But if it's just normal drum sessions or things that I do on a daily basis, I don't even need them anymore. Although it would be nice to remember what I did sometimes.
Do you use I/O plugin before going back into the board?
I do not. I just go straight out of the outputs of the Motu interfaces right to the console. I could, if I was staying in the box, I could. I actually did an experiment one time where I took 24 channels on Oxes in Logic, and I pulled up all the channels on the board on the I/O plugin, which was kind of cool, until I realized that I couldn't quite get it to work the same way with the buses, and I use all the buses on the console too as my groups, and I could never get that to kind of work the same or feel the same in the box. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. PCM42 is on my list. So is the new AMS Neve 500 reverb. Can't remember the model. Man, I'm having a brain fart with models today. Model numbers. Is on my list. And then there's the Yamaha PR oh man, what was this? Let me look this thing up. This reverb.
Yeah,
I have to find it.
Native Logic plugins versus the third party. Man, it's funny. In the beginning, everybody was just using the Wave stuff. Oh man, you gotta use this. And lately, besides the Apollo plugins, which are unique because I think they're very close to the real deal, and that's always your personal opinion, but I find myself using mostly Logic plugins, especially EQ and compressor.
I use a lot of Logic plugins.
It's just I go to the Logic ones because they do what I want. The interfaces, which some plugins I hate what they do. It's like you cannot maximize the UI, so they stay fixed. That happens with the Apollo ones. So if you want to make it bigger, you cannot see the markings. You can't do it. But the Logic ones, you can make them huge, which I like. So yeah, I mean, I end up using a lot of Logic plugins lately. I don't know, getting lazy.
They work. Eric, rigid fiberglass or, like Big River says, rock wool. Actual insulation, just normal pink stuff there's not enough there to do anything. The pink stuff is great in the walls for dampening when you're putting your what's that stuff called? Drywall up. You get that on your studs and use that. It's a fantastic dampener, which helps your soundproofing considerably. But for actual panels, I have a little of both. I have a lot of rock wool panels, and I have a lot of them that have rigid fiberglass. In there, I have both. The ones that you always see behind the kit that I use a lot of the time that are black with the wood frames are all rock wool. I actually like how they sound when they're directly around a source better than the ones that have rigid fiberglass. And I have some of the Real Trap stuff that is also awesome. But there's something about those rock wool ones in there. I have them, they're 4-inch thick. And that when I put it around a bass amp or guitar amp, it doesn't seem to build in the same way. When I get them around drums, it just dries things off and makes things sound nice. Where some of the rigid fiberglass, like the real traps and the couple that I have that are even rigid fiberglass, it's a different sound when you get them close to the source. How different? I mean, not drastically, but it's different enough to where I notice it. I'll put it that way. So I like the rock wool is great. It's just a little harder to use when you're trying to stand things up, so you have to kind of compress it a little bit or have it tight enough to so it doesn't start to just sag, which you don't have that problem with rigid fiberglass.
Here's a cool question by Kaspers. My MacBook Pro is getting old, and he's considering Windows laptops. Look, it's in the end, it's all about budget, but in terms of practicality, depending on how old your MacBook Pro is, but let's say it's a 2010, I would look not on to the latest MacBook Pros. Just look at a used one, maybe a 2015 or something. So at least you can stay in the same ecosystem, because once you go Windows, you have to change your hard drives. You have to change everything because the format is different, right? Logic does not like Windows formatted drives and vice versa. It's because with a Windows format, you cannot read an Apple formatted drive. So really think about price is not the only thing. It's workflow, So certain things are so different on Windows that, maybe you won't like it, even though the price may be attractive. But in the end, just look at the option. I would consider first used MacBook Pro 15-inch from like 2015 or something like that. Don't go for the newer ones. I mean, you still have the old port problem. Yeah? All the new ones are all USB-C. You go to an older MacBook, you still have USB in it, Thunderbolt, and these laptops over here are 2012, and they still work. It's amazing. So consider a used MacBook Pro.
Eric, I was just trying to answer your question, and I just got told by YouTube that my comment was too long. Told me my comment's too long on my own channel. So anyway, Eric, the Auralex, that stuff works great for early reflections, basic, controlling your room, but none of the foam-based product stuff really works well for the low end. It just, it doesn't have the density, especially anything that's been cut and shaped. That stuff, you need to get something else. Check out the GK Acoustics. They make some really good stuff. Real Traps has some good stuff too. The GK Acoustic stuff is actually fairly well priced for what you're getting, and they also have a lot of great things on the website on how to figure out what you need to get. And I have used blankets many a time in a pinch for vocals to kill reflections of a room, especially if we're in a little closet or something like that. Some heavy packing blankets, man, they can be your best friend. Favorite amps for recording rock? I'm starting with a 5150.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's if you like that modern sound, because it's not the old EVH sound at all. It's just it's more modern. If you want probably older sounding, I would also recommend Wagner.
Oh, Wagner stuff is really good, and I love the JCM 2000 for it. Some of that stuff too.
The traditional Marshall, you can't go wrong with that.
But a 5150, holy crap.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the modern sounds, you can do metal, you can do rock, you can do whatever you want with it. Even death metal you can do with it.
And I've done all those things. What's the furry friend's name on the meter bridge? This. This is the spirit of Oscar, who I lost a few weeks ago. He's even wearing his collar here. And this was one of Oscar's favorite toys that he had ripped open the bottom, like he did most of them, and I was going to sew it back together and never quite got around to doing it in time. So this is the spirit of Oscar that lives on top of the console forever, along with his footprint over by the Trident meters.
Yeah, so Casper, if you're still there, just make sure whatever you buy, go quad cores. Don't buy dual cores, because if you're having problems with a 2014 MacBook Pro, a lot of times it comes down to the CPU. So always make sure you're getting quad core. That's essential.
I'm trying to. All right. I thought you were going to talk longer. I'm trying to type now. Talk. Eric, you know what, you guys? We got to figure out a way to share some stuff back and forth more. hit me up on Facebook because we can share some photos there, or maybe on the Ultimate Studios Inc. page or the Recording Ninja page. I'll get something set up where we can all at least have a space to where we can share some photos and different things. I wish they would let us do that in these chats. Would be freaking awesome. It would be so much handier when we're trying to see what each other's got, man. Mesa Mark, the original block. Oh yeah, the 2 by. See, you've got a 2x12. Well, we have I use How and Tao's. We've got a Bogner Shiva from them here. That's really freaking cool.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of amps, I mean, there's just so much out there right now. Jesus, I mean, you still have the traditional stuff, but man, all the new boutique stuff, you know, Hughes and Kettner, Diesel. I mean, Jesus Christ, all these German.
What's the Sovtech one we saw the other day?
I mean, they're all amazing. You know, I mean, for all the more modern rock, heavy rock and metal, I mean, they're all great. They're all great.
Michael, usually if you see I don't have too many problems with Logic not distributing the processing very well, but usually if it's one core that's building up, it's a particular plugin somewhere. And every single time I've had one core build up like that, I've always just had to go through and figure out what plugin it was, and it's always been a single plugin, usually third party, although I have had the occasion where it was a Logic plugin, and I turned it off or took it out and then even just reinserted that instance, and it was fine. That's usually what one core is when it's spiking like that. Yeah, Wade, definitely tough to lose the furry friends. Makes it a little quiet around the studio. Plus, I think, honestly, everyone that came here to see Oscar and not me, including myself. One of these days, we'll see who gets to come take his spot here. Michael, are you saying you have Isotope as that plugin that causes that for you? That could be. Ben, you're welcome, man. Our pleasure. We have a lot of fun doing this. I'm glad we have the means and the facility to do things here like this for everybody. So, believe me, it's our pleasure too. Thank you for being a part of the community.
Oh yeah, apparently it is Isotope.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Oh yeah, I mean all the Isotope stuff, you know, ozone, all that stuff. Yeah, it's just CPU hog. So just be mindful. Be mindful, right? It's a famous line. Not at the expense of the present. Be mindful of the future.
Starting to sound like Obi-Wan. Okay, here, Ernesto, read this one.
Using my first mic pre?
Yeah. So WA pre-70, so it's the WA-73, I'm assuming, not the pre-73, which is Golden Age.
Yeah.
Single channel going into line input on a Scarlett 616. If I DI guitar, can I put my pedal board or a pedal in front of the mic pre? Well, if you're DIing guitar, your guitar is not going in the mic pre. Your guitar is going into the DI of the mic pre. And in that case, yes, you could put a pedal there. It'd be almost like how we reamp when we would take a split signal, or in the old studio when we did everything that way, and his setup would be guitar into whatever pedals he was going to use, and then we had an emulator box, the Blackstar pedal, and then the other side was a DI going straight into the computer. So yeah, that way whatever effects that he was using got printed, so when we went to reamp, all that stuff was there, and we could at least hear it in real time while we were tracking. So yeah, you should be able to do that. But if you're DI and you're not going into the pre, you're going to be going into the line input, or the high Z setting. It might have a button you have to push. I can't remember what's on the front of those. What else we got? What time is it? All right, we're going to do a couple more, and then I see Chipotle in my future.
Oh, here's the Warm Audi 73. Let's see.
The Ozone 8 crashing every time. Yeah, I don't have that one yet. Man, they make some good stuff, but some of these, I think, these plugins that do, like the Ozone, man, they do some heavy lifting, but the price of that heavy lifting is they also take up some CPU power and take a little extra programming. So it might just be they need to get some bugs worked out. I'll have to check that stuff out a little bit more.
Yeah, so that's the warm audio. Here's the warm audio 73.
Yeah, so the warm audio has an instrument in that you'll be plugging into.
And you got the line section and then the mic section.
Yeah, then you have the traditional line and mic section of the input gain. So that instrument's going to be high Z. So you should be fine. You'll just have to use while you're tracking, you know, unless you're using a distortion pedal and that's the sound you want, you'll just use some sort of emulator in there. And that should work fine.
And you got the instrument switch as well.
Yeah, which you probably have to turn on.
Yep.
When you plug that in.
Mm-hmm.
There's the line and instrument. So that'll most likely, if you're going in that front, the line input, I think there's a line input on the back of that. If I'm not mistaken, there is. Here, we're not connected anymore. I can't show it. Oh, yeah, we are. Here, let me switch over to that.
Here.
Un momento, por favor.
So, yeah, so this is the back.
Yeah, so there's line out. You got the insert, send and return, and line input. Yeah, so you've got the line input on the back. So the cool thing about I like about what Warm is doing with this, Heritage is doing the same thing. Is what's untraditional is they're giving you all the extra inputs and outputs on the back of some of this gear. So you could go use this when you're mixing, you know, and if you've got one that has the EQ on it, then you can use that EQ when you're mixing, or you could run stuff back through this pre and hit it really hard and get some cool color on it that way. So the front, if you're using the line input at the back, it's got the button for the line input on the front, and you have the instrument button, and the impedance will be different. So for you with the guitar, you're going to go straight in that instrument in the front, most likely just hitting that instrument button. So the impedance is correct, and then go to town. Whatever cool pedals you have. What pedals you got? Anything cool? I need to add some to my reverb list. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so usually for guitar inputs, whenever you hear something that sounds like crap, it's because there's an impedance mismatch. So always double check if you have the correct input type.
Caspers, don't know much about those Mackie MR5 monitors. My experience with Mackie monitors is they tend to be a bit bright. A little hi-fi sounding. That's not necessarily bad. It's not something I would probably mix on or something, but I think they make them to try to sound good and exciting when you're listening. But with anything, man, if you get used to it, you can make it work. Oh, here, let me flip back over.
Go enter.
There we go. You miss it?
Yeah.
The switch is over here. I'd go to the other camera we have set up, but I'm not sure I set up the I.O. with the Black Magic right, and I don't want to lose the audio again. I'll check that for next time. Moving on down. Thoughts about Dante. Dante is actually cool. If I had a bigger place and it was multiple rooms going, or something I'm looking into doing in the next few years, which is to add a separate room just for live performances and streaming that's a little bit bigger, I'll probably look at getting a Dante network so I can run some stuff around easier and have control from whatever room we're in. We went actually down to Sony. When was that? That was a couple years ago now. Jeez.
Oh, yeah.
They did Focusrite did a whole RedNet thing with the Dante, and it was really cool. Really cool.
Oh, here got Jin says, does Kemper feel like a real amp? I record an Engel amp, but I think my neighbor is really thinking about murdering me. Awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, once you go emulation, it's like it's a compromise. Sometimes you can't tell the difference, but sometimes you can. So you have to test it yourself. Sorry, that's really opinionated.
I'm not a huge fan of some of the amp modelers. However, I have done some modeling, or whatever they call it, for the Kemper with a friend who had a bunch of Bogner stuff, and I was surprised on some of them how close we were able to get it. Where I started noticing the differences when we would start stacking things or double tracking, and that the way the mid-range is on them is just very, very different. Even the settings that I thought we did a great job on just had a very different feel. It always ended up being a bit papery, and it was missing the chaos that goes through an amp. The extra noise, the way the amp responds to your fingers on strings. I like that stuff, so it never bothers me. For live, man, I get why a lot of guys use it, because you can carry some cool sounds with you. You don't have to take your vintage tube head out and risk ruining that thing.
Ooh, here's a question
also,
for you.
if you don't want your neighbors to murder you, I recommend using a Kemper.
How do you deal with sympathetic tom hum?
Oh, God. It's tricky. Tuning first. You got to figure out if the hum is just natural the way they're tuned, or if you have toms that are competing. A lot of the times 12-inch racks, can have horrible effect on snares. And a lot of the time it's like tweaking that bottom head to get it right, or just tweaking the pitch up or down, which can get tricky when you have toms sounding the way you want, but you hit the snare and you got a problem with the rack, or you hit the rack and there's a problem with the snare. Sometimes it's just fine tuning. Floor toms and stuff, a lot of times it's getting the bottom head right. I use thinner heads on my floor toms now. I'm just trying them out, so I don't have a total opinion yet, but I've just installed some Rezo 7, I think is the model from Evans, that are really thin. I'm trying those out on my floor toms. Another trick that I do is I have cotton balls. Say you have a floor tom that just you hit it and it won't stop ringing, and you hit the kick and you're always hearing it. I'll take a bunch of cotton balls and I stick them in the air hole on the side of the drum. No good way to say that, is there?
No.
On the side of the drum. And I'll just do a couple at a time, and I'll hit it, or I'll play the kit until I get it to dampen, because what'll happen is they're light enough to where you hit the drum as they kind of float for a second and then they drop down, but they don't have weight like moon gel and other things that add weight to the head that change the tone. They're light enough to where if you get enough of them in there, they just do this great job at dampening and killing some of that. But it starts with tuning, really, and really paying close attention to how you have the top and bottom heads tuned on each drum to make sure they're as optimal as possible for the sound you want, and then how they work together. That's a huge question. You know what? We're going to talk to Mike Nealon about that on Tuesday, because he's also fantastic at tuning. So that'll be part of our conversation on Tuesday. So come back on Tuesday. Next Tuesday, that is. Well, you can't come last Tuesday. It's already over.
Well, if you're talking about who's the guitar player in the studio, and if it's me that you mean, then my name is Ernesto, so that you know.
Or Heber. Oh man, I'm missing some questions. How? Yes. Brown rice, black beans, chicken, hot sauce, tons of cheese. You got it, man. That is in my future. See, is it okay to insert jacks as direct outs if console doesn't have direct outs? To use insert. If I knew how to read. I'm from Kansas. English is not my first language. Is it okay to use insert jacks as direct outs? You could, but they're not going to be post fader, or they shouldn't be post fader, because the insert is going to be between your input gain and whatever your output gain. So if you're on the console, up at the top, my red knobs are my input gain, then I got the faders, and the inserts are between them. Yes, you can send stuff out, because it'd just be like sending to a compressor or something somewhere else, but you would have to use your gain on the top as your overall volume then, and not the fader on the console. So it could work, yes. If they're not balanced, you might run into some noise issues. Everything on this console is balanced, so I don't have that problem. But it'd be worth trying. Heck, you might run into a really cool workflow, something a little bit different, and come up with something new, which would be bitching. I do have the EQ one. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Pedals you use are Clyde Wah into Sparkle Drive with Voodoo into... Oh, nice. Yeah. Holy crap, that's a lot of good ones. Ooh, the Moog Mini Flange. That's on my list.
They're asking for a drum tuning workshop.
Yeah, we'll have to do that at some point. I got to say this, that's a huge topic. I don't necessarily have a point-by-point list to give. Maybe I should sit down and think about that. There's a couple really good tuning guys that I think do a good job at some tuning things on YouTube. Matter of fact, let me just find one of them real quick and send it. But yeah, you know what? You're right. We need to do something like that and just talk about how the different things happen. There's a guest I've been trying to get on the show that is one of the best in town at that, and I've just I haven't been able to get him to come over. I'll keep working on it. If not, I'll work on that. But there is a great one on YouTube. There's a guy that I love his videos that are... Let's see. I recently watched one. Let me look through my history real fast and see. Turns out I watch a lot of videos about gear, which I'm sure surprises everyone. Oh, man, I wish I could remember his name. Let me ask everybody this, because it would be nice. I would love a way to get some of these questions that I can't answer right now, or finding this stuff. I'd like to find a way to that we can all share this stuff together. So I can either create something on the Ultimate Studios website, or I could get something, just a easy community thing on Facebook that we could use everybody together to show stuff off. What would be y'all's preference? Man, I cannot find this video because there's this one guy, I cannot remember his name, which says, honestly, it's more about my memory. Oh, there it is right there. Hold on. Rob Brown. I've actually used some of his actual techniques before, and here, I'll just show you real fast. Well, he's got some pretty cool tuning videos, actually. I really like his stuff. You know, he has his way of doing it, but it actually works. I've tried it a few times, and it's pretty cool. But I'll work on one, too, because I do have some specifics, not technique-wise, but how I kind of approach getting the sound that I'm trying to get, and I use it with a lot of the artists that come in. We end up tuning things that way, which usually ends up bottom higher than the top, finding how the drum sits first, and then worrying about the interval between them later.
Yeah. The majority says Facebook.
All right, then give me this over this weekend. I got a couple mixes to do, but I'll get something. All right, guys.
All right,
this has been awesome.
Lots of fun. So keep those questions coming. You know, examples. You know, problems, experiences. Man, we can all learn.
I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything in the back. Okay, last one. Do you time align phase samples on multi-mic setups on guitar amps? Okay. Well, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question. I do not, because when I have if I have multiple mics on an amp, I sum them together on the console and they go in as one channel. So I am doing it purely by ear. What sounds? We may move mic here forward just to check things, or a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll flip one out of phase and I'll move the other. I'll get both mics where I think they sound good on their own, and then I'll flip one out of phase and I'll move it till it sounds absolutely horrible or is the thinnest sound possible. Then I flip it back, and then I know they are as in phase as possible, and then they get summed. So I don't print the multiple mics separate anymore. To me, it's a blend, and it's usually never the same volume. There's one main one, and then the other one gets blended in somehow. You'll see me doing more of multiple amps and using that than printing the multiple mics.
Yeah, in the
end,
end,
I don't know about you though.
In the end, it's about how much more you want to tinker. In the end, you know.
I don't want to tinker.
If you want to commit, then just condense, four mics into one mic, and there's your tone. If you want to screw with it later, keep all the individuals,
Yeah.
So
I don't. For me, if I have multiple mics on the guitar amp, I'm not looking as those mics as different sounds to me. They're two things that put together the sound. So that amp gets printed as a sound, and then it's done. So whenever I pull it up later, there's my sound. There's no more fiddling with it at all. If I need something else, I'll print another guitar track or something like that. But anyway, everybody, thank you. You all rock. Stay safe. Create some music. I'll work on getting a Facebook community thing where we can all share some photos and music and all that fun stuff. And we'll see you Tuesday. Mike Nealon's going to be here. We're going to be talking drums, snares, and recording. We'll even talk a little tuning with him because he's really good at that. And then we'll be back next Thursday also with a new topic.
Exactly. And keep those questions coming. All right.
Yep. All right, guys. Now, I wish this was more exciting. Dun, 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 dun,
oh, yeah, the big moment when the screen goes black.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you. We'll see you.
Thank you.